Okay, so it looks like we are live on two of the sites, but our YouTube channel is set to the wrong time. So give me 1 second to fix this, and then we'll be able to go live on that as well. Okay, perfect. It looks like it is working, I believe. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm Jessica Levesque. I'm clearly really good at technology, and I'm the executive director at C4. So today we're going to be talking about the Certified Bitcoin Professional exam, and we're going to go through some of the exam questions, go through the answers of them using Kahoot. So today we're joined by Hunter Albright, Rodney McInnes, and Janine Romer should also be joining us shortly. She is having some mic problems too. So technology issues all around, but isn't that the joy of live streaming? So we are going to get started in a minute. So if you are able to join our Kahoot, please do. We'll give you all a minute to set that up. So just give us a second and then. So I just want to check, are we live on YouTube? Is it showing? Heard that maybe we're not. Okay, yes, so we are. Okay, sorry about that. Like we said, technology today just seems to be, after us. So, but we are ready to start now. So if you are on Kahoot, or if you're not, please check in. It's kahoot.it. And then there's a game pin there as well. So you can just enter on your phone so that you're able to also be watching the stream. That would be great. And then we'll get started. Okay. Craig Wright, okay. We've got Satoshi and Craig Wright. Let's see. We can get started on the sample question while we wait for more people to join. So let's get started. So what we're going to do for the CBP study session is to go through the questions, and then you can vote through Kahoot as well. So our first question is, the CBP is only offered by C4. So true or false? So while we're going through this, I'm going to start to answer this question. So the CBP is only offered by C4. This is true. The nonprofit organization, Certified Bitcoin Professional, is our first certificate, first exam that we started offering in 2014. And there is no other organization out there that gives the CBP. So if you want to become a certified Bitcoin professional, this is it. And our exam was created by professionals, by experts in the field, and we worked together to curate all of the content, the questions, and put it together into an exam so that people like you are able to prove whether or not you are able to speak about Bitcoin, explain how it works, and all of those good things. So let's see here. We are ready to go to the next question, unless anybody else has anything to add. Hunter, Rodney, Janine, they're our CBP committee members. Okay, well then let's get on to the next question.
Okay, so the next question we're going to cover is, what is the Byzantine generals problem? Option 1 is a computer strategy game that pays winners in Bitcoin. Option 2 is a set of problems submitted to improve Bitcoin. And option 3 is a problem where unreliable or imperfect information causes system failure. All right, the answer is a problem where unreliable or imperfect information causes system failure. And the background for this historically was when you had generals spread out on sort of a battlefield, and they all needed to act in a coordinated fashion, but they couldn't trust the information. And the relevance to what we're all interested in terms of blockchain as well as sort of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is it really then provides the mechanism for a trusted consensus. And the key element in Bitcoin in particular is sort of the crypto puzzle that miners have to solve in order to sort of be chosen to mine the block, and then everybody's ability to quickly prove that that is the right answer. Anyone else have any other additional sort of thoughts on that to share?
I think this is a really important kind of way to explain something that we talk a lot about, why Bitcoin matters. And we're going to get to a question about how Bitcoin changed the world as we know it. But I like that this is a way to talk about what problem Bitcoin solved in a more theoretical way that tells a story, rather than just talking about the economy, math, things like that. It's a much more approachable way to understand why Bitcoin matters.
Yeah, and it is at the core of it, it's a game theory problem that was played out sort of over history in a lot of different contexts, and that the learnings and the approaches that have been used throughout history are now being applied in sort of a mathematical implementation. And it's critical to being able to make the decentralized sort of systems work, and one in which, the identity of a participant doesn't have to be known.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So let's head to the next question.
All right, I think I'm up for the next one. And so this question is, which property of money in the following list is not necessary for an asset to be used as a medium of exchange? So the first option is fungibility. Second option is ease of transmission. Third option is government backing. And the fourth option is scarcity. Which one of these is not necessary? So that it is the government backing that is not necessary. Throughout time, there have been lots of currencies and tokens or elements that have been used for a medium exchange that have not been backed by a government. So whether that goes from feathers to shells to gold and other sort of precious materials, those elements throughout history have been used because they're fungible, so they can be used for multiple things and used repeatedly. There's an ease of transmission in terms of passing them from one person to another, so they can be sort of carried or moved from one place to another. And then there's scarcity, that they're hard to come by. So shells might be a good medium of exchange if you're in the mountains and you're far away from an ocean, but if you're closer to where there's a greater prevalence of shells, that's probably not, because they're not as scarce as they are in that geography, as a sort of simple example.
Yeah, and I wanted to say something else about the government backing. I think most of us probably would assume years ago, like the government had to back something in order for it to have some type of worth. And I was listening to a podcast, I was listening to Planet Money from NPR, and there is an episode about Andrew Jackson and how the Bank of the United States turned into the Bank of Pennsylvania, and then how that was turned into, not existing anymore either. And it's interesting to hear about in the 1820s, the politics around currency And this idea still of the government having to back whatever people are using, and people wanting the government to say if something is valid or not. And it isn't true. The government doesn't need to back something in order for it to have value anywhere. And that's the great thing about Bitcoin, is we get to decide as people what we think has value and to use that as a way to exchange goods.
Yeah, Jess, I think that's a really good point. Right? And if I recall correctly, there was a point at the sort of beginning of the United States, and sort of at that point in time, there was, I think, about 4,000 different currencies in what was the United States. If you looked at sort of, all the different units that were being used for sort of a medium of exchange of goods and services. And so they all had different purposes, and they were used in different geographies in different areas, but there was a wealth of different options that people could use. And it was all centered around what was trusted. And so the government has a role and has played a role in terms of that trust element, but there's also more options now that allow there to be sort of flexibility and other paths that people can pursue in terms of, something that acts as a medium of exchange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add before we go on to the next question? All right. Well, right before we go on, I wanted to point out there's been some comments in the YouTube chat that the question isn't up long enough on Kahoot. So we're doing our best. This is our first time doing a live stream with Kahoot. So please be patient with us. We'll try to, I don't think we can extend the time right now, but what we can do is put the questions in the questions and answers in the chat so that you can see what we're asking. At least you can see the problem, so that maybe that'll give you some extra time. But this is definitely good feedback for us as we do this again. And remember, this is recorded on YouTube, so you can watch this later as well if needed. And yeah, we'll get better as we go through and do this. So please gain the knowledge you can from this, and we'll end up breaking some of the content up as well on YouTube so that it's easier to read and study from at a later time as well. So that being said, let's jump into the next problem or question, which is about a problem. So Rodney, take it over.
The question is, what problem did the Bitcoin blockchain solve? And that's decentralized consensus, public key cryptography, spam prevention, or online payments. We got one answer, two answers, three answers. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Decentralized consensus, which we maybe have mentioned, one or two questions ago. So the problem the blockchain solved is decentralized consensus, which is how can you have different computers around the world in agreement with each other on a continuous basis. And so by having the blockchain in the background of Bitcoin, it makes reference to the previous version of the ledger in each block header. And so each time a new block is mined, it is saying that the contents of this are accurate and match the previous block. And that way you can have people around the world or computers around the world agreeing with each other based on the little bit of information that is provided in each block. So decentralized consensus is a very important part of the Bitcoin blockchain, because if we weren't in consensus, Hunter would have one version, Jess would have one version, Janine would have one version, and then I would have one version where I have all of the Bitcoin and no one else gets any. And I like that version, but everyone else may disagree with it.
Yeah, no, Rodney, I really like that. Go ahead, Janine.
I just wanted to quickly say I think that they one person who selected spam prevention. For anyone who might be curious, so Proof of work, which is the consensus algorithm that Bitcoin uses. Proof of work was, I mean, obviously Bitcoin had its unique take on it, but proof of work as a concept was not invented with Bitcoin. It was actually, I think, I can't remember when the paper was originally published. I think it was like the 80s or early 90s, but most famously, Adam Back came up with something called Hashcash, and he was actually, that was a proof of work concept and or a implementation of a proof of work concept. He was actually not the first person to come up with proof of work. There was a slightly earlier paper that I can't remember their names of, but proof of work in general has been around a lot longer than Bitcoin. So close, but not quite with that answer.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys. Let's head to the next question, which I believe is going to be Janine.
Yes, so the next question is, which of the following is a true statement about the invention of Bitcoin? The real identity of Bitcoin is not publicly known. Bitcoin was first activated in 2002 but failed during the dot-com crash, or SHA-256 and ECDSA were invented alongside Bitcoin. And the correct answer is the real identity of Bitcoin's creator is not known publicly. And I stand behind that statement 100%.
Yeah, which I think is an interesting thing to think about. Like, why isn't the creator of something that most everyone has heard of at this point, maybe not most everyone, but a lot of people known? Like, how has this individual or group of individuals, Satoshi Nakamoto, stayed hidden? And Janine, as somebody who is a privacy person, do you have any thoughts on how that is possible?
Yeah, I mean, definitely whoever Satoshi Nakamoto was, man, woman, group of people, they did a very good job of not leaving an obvious trail to who they were. Obviously, if you've been in Bitcoin long enough, you've probably come across all of the theories about who it could be. For example, Hal Finney, who is as far as we know, the second person to start mining Bitcoin besides Satoshi. There's a theory that Hal is actually Satoshi. And coincidentally, unfortunately, when he passed away, that coincides sort of with when Satoshi stopped being active. And there's a couple of other theories of people, including, I think I saw a new one last year or something. But yeah, it's kind of amazing that they managed to stay anonymous. There is one theory that I've heard that there are possibly documents pointing to the identity of Satoshi in the Snowden archive from the National Security Agency. So if those ever get published, who knows, we may have some clues there. And if anybody would know who Satoshi is, it would probably be the NSA. But yeah, I can't imagine. It's unclear like how much of it was deliberate knowledge and skill that Satoshi was able to stay anonymous, and how much of it was just that they were maybe just not a very public person and they just got really lucky. I would be surprised if it was just luck that they managed to do this. So yeah, it's not an easy thing to do, to create a popular virtual asset like Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency and to not have your name known ever.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating because I think that their anonymity of Satoshi might be the greatest contribution, because I'm not sure Bitcoin could have had its success that it is having over sort of the last sort of 10 plus years if there was an originator. And I think we've seen that in a lot of different technologies, that it becomes more about the person and sort of the cult around that person as opposed to maybe the intent. And I think the anonymity has really encouraged the community as a whole to take ownership of it and support it, which has helped it evolve, I think, in sort of the path that it's taken.
Yeah, I also wanted to imagine what I see often in a lot of the theories is like analysis of Satoshi's writings, because that's really all we have to go off of. And so there's been like, what kinds of language do they use? Is there any clue there? And apparently Satoshi tended to use a lot of the British spelling of English words. And also, given that the Genesis block included a headline from Times, which is based in the UK, that the main theory is that they were someone who was either living in the UK and or also British. I don't know about that, but I do want to point out that the reasoning behind the reason given about using British spelling of words, that would mean that I'm Satoshi, because I actually use the British spelling of English words a lot because I read a lot of British English books growing up. So I guess I'm Satoshi, we're all Satoshi.
Aren't we all Satoshi? I kind of like that phrase. Okay, so awesome. Let's head to the next question. Our Kahoot masters ready? Okay. Digital signatures can be forged by anyone who knows your Bitcoin address. Is this true or false? So if you have any crypto, if you have any Bitcoin, and you've received it by sharing your address with someone, you are probably hoping as much as possible that they cannot be forged by anyone who knows your Bitcoin address. And you would be correct. Digital signatures cannot be forged by anyone who knows your Bitcoin address. So let's talk about why. So first, let's talk about what digital signatures are. So they're a sort of electronic signature that uses algorithms that create a unique fingerprint. And this happens through one-way encryption. And it's not two ways, meaning you can't go back and forth. And the reason for that is math, which I can't explain in detail because math is not my thing, but I do know it is because of math, and it's through ECDSA, the elliptic curved signature, digital signature algorithm. And does somebody who can speak math want to explain this a little bit more?
Where's Dirk when we need him?
I know, this was his question. Yeah, unfortunately, Dirk couldn't make it. So Hunter, do you want to explain what ECDSA is? Very briefly, we're not going to go into how the mathematical algorithm works.
Yeah, it is an algorithm that allows the creation of the public key based on the private key. And as you referenced, it's one way, and so it can't be reversed. So that allows somebody to have a private key, be able to prove that they're the owner of sort of a public key affiliated with the public key address, but not, there's not a risk to publish your public key for both being able to receive Bitcoin and have your funds or have your Bitcoin be at risk from somebody else being able to access them.
Yeah, that was a great way to explain it, Hunter. Thank you. Okay, so looking at the leaderboard, we've got Craig Wright in first, then Cryptails, Zubin, Satoshi, and Jack M. All right, so let's head to the next question.
All right, so this one is, what is cryptography? The options we have here are: cryptography is the name of the algorithm that secures Bitcoin private keys. Cryptography is the science or study of the techniques of secret writing. Cryptography compresses the size of the Bitcoin blockchain. Or cryptography is the routing mechanism, or is a routing mechanism. And the correct answer is cryptography is the science or study of the techniques of secret writing. I thought it'd be fun to go with cryptography is the history of crypts. But
maybe we should add that to the exam.
Yeah, but it is. And cryptography is the science and study of the techniques of secret writing, and crypt means secret. So we think of crypts as being sort of hidden rooms, vaults, and sort of underground secret rooms. Basically, that's where it has come from in the past and sort of with math, more math, as Jess was pointing out earlier, it is being used to do secret writing, and that has evolved over time. And would encourage anybody to go back. Dirk has done a great session that has been recorded, and we can share out the link, where he really goes into the history of cryptography. And if you're interested in that stuff, it's a great talk and fascinating to see how that has evolved over time.
Okay. I was just alerted that my internet connection is unstable, so I hope that you can hear me okay as we move to the next question. So, and yeah, we'll link to Dirk's cryptography video, which I think is super helpful. He explains it really well. Okay, so let's head to the next question, which is, what is the name of the smallest unit of Bitcoin? So remember that Bitcoin is divisible. You can own part of a Bitcoin. I should have worn my shirt today that reads, you can own a fraction of a Bitcoin. And so the answers are millibit, nanobit, bitcent, or Satoshi.
We bought that shirt for one of my business partners, and he's always shocked by people that come up to him and go, "Really?"
Yeah, it is definitely a misconception. Looks like everybody who's joined today knows the answer is Satoshi, but a lot of people don't realize that you can own part of a Bitcoin. You don't have to own an entire Bitcoin, and depending on the day, it's easier or more difficult to get to that point where you can own a Bitcoin. But there are 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin. And this means that each Satoshi is worth 0.0000, a lot of zeros, I can't count them all without messing it up, 1 BTC. So in order for a Satoshi to be worth 1 cent, 1 BTC needs to be worth $1 million, which, fingers crossed. But so yeah, the answer is Satoshis, which is obviously from the name of the person or people who created Bitcoin, Satoshi. Okay, let's head to the next question, which I believe is Janine.
Which of the following ways? Which of the following is the safest way to receive Bitcoin from someone? Generate a new key/address on an offline machine, reuse an existing address, use a sealed paper wallet with a definitive amount, or give them your private key. And the correct answer is to generate a new key/address on an offline machine, which is definitely true. You do not want to do any of the other things.
Why, Janine? Can you explain why you don't want to do any of the other things?
Yeah, so let's see. To reuse an existing address. Now, you could do this. This is a way you can receive Bitcoin this way. Like a lot of people often have, for example, a public donation address that they publish once on their website or something like that. And anybody and everybody can send money to that at any time. And then you can look it up on the Block Explorer, for example, and see how much money, or if it's in your own wallet, you can also see it that way. The reason it's not recommended to do that is because anyone, like I said, they can take that address and put it into a Block Explorer and see how much money it's received. And maybe you don't want everyone to see how much money you've received, especially if you're a private person. It's also in general for on-chain privacy with Bitcoin not a good idea, because when you also want to spend it or anything, essentially it makes it very hard for you to reclaim any privacy if you've used that address for multiple things. And so it's just generally not recommended for privacy reasons. The other answer, use a sealed paper wallet with a definitive amount. Again, it is possible to give people Bitcoin with paper wallets, but paper wallets can be very difficult to use. And so in general, it's not recommended practice to give people Bitcoin via paper wallets unless the other person really knows what they're doing. Because in terms of getting the private key off of the paper, or even protecting the private key if you don't want to use it yet, that can be quite difficult and hard to manage, so not recommended. And then giving them your private key, you definitely don't want to do that, because that means that any Bitcoin that gets sent to any of the addresses that are controlled by that private key can then be spent by anybody who has the private key. So you do not want to be receiving Bitcoin to an address that someone else controls unless you purposely want that. So the right answer is definitely to generate a new key or address on an offline machine. And when we say offline machine, usually for most people, that's going to be, for example, a hardware wallet, which even though it is plugged into, when you're using it, it usually is plugged into your computer. The device, the hardware wallet device itself, is not online because it is designed to have separation between what is on the hardware wallet and your laptop. It's not supposed to be passing any data back and forth except for the signed transaction, which is the purpose of the hardware wallet. You organize how you want your transaction to look in the whatever wallet interface you're using on your computer. That information gets passed to the hardware wallet, which is where the private key is stored, and then the transaction is signed, and then that information is passed back to your computer. So the private key never leaves the hardware device. It's never on a internet connected machine.
Awesome. Thank you, Janine. That was super helpful. Okay, let's go to the next question, which is in the client's wallets and key management section. So Rodney, take it away.
In Bitcoin, a private key is used to blank, reverse transactions, confirm balances, connect to the Bitcoin network, or authorize Bitcoin transactions.
I feel like we should have had some music, like dun, 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 dun. But I won't keep singing because that'll ruin everyone's day.
And the answer is authorize Bitcoin transactions. Private keys are used to sign your transactions, and that's what allows them to be sent. It's just why people complain about the term wallet within the Bitcoin space, because keychain is a better description of what is actually being done. To kind of discount the other answers, connecting to the Bitcoin network does not necessarily require a private key. You can download the blockchain and look through it that way. Reverse transactions, unless you have a non-existent amount of computing power to kind of reverse engineer the transactions in the blockchain, you just can't reverse transactions. I mean, at this point, it's literally impossible. And confirm balances. So you don't need a private key to confirm a balance. As Janine was talking about, if you look into someone's public address, you can see exactly what has been sent and or received from that address.
Yeah, I like that you pointed out that wallet is I feel like an easy way for people who are unfamiliar with some of these terms to jump in to understand where the Bitcoin is kept. But it is confusing when we start talking about then private keys and your public address and public keys and all of that. And one of the ways I think is helpful to explain how this works is your private key is like a key to a door that you are able to open. Anyone can see in how much Bitcoin is in there. They can put Bitcoin through the slot, but they can't open it unless they have this private key. And you can have a keychain of keys that opens different doors that host different amounts. And that is sort of like these different addresses within what is called a wallet.
Similarly, I hear a lot kind of email. So email is an example. Your public key is your email address, and your private key is your password to access your, well, let's go with Hotmail account.
I was actually in a group discussion a few weeks ago where we were talking about Bitcoin usability, and I suggested that wouldn't it be a great idea now that people are starting to be more people are starting to become used to having these hardware two-factor tokens to actually turn Bitcoin wallet keys into hardware tokens that can be put on a keychain, so that we can actually start calling it a keychain and people would understand it conceptually. I think that'd be a good idea. Someone should do that. Free idea.
I love it. Yeah, free idea. It's a good one. Okay, let's head to the next one.
Okay, the next question is, what is Bitcoin D? A portable Bitcoin keys outside of a computer, a Bitcoin exchange that facilitates trades between Bitcoin and fiat, a dedicated operating system for mining Bitcoin, or a Bitcoin wallet with a command line interface. And the correct answer that actually only one person got it this time. It is a Bitcoin wallet with a command line interface. So Bitcoin D actually stands for Bitcoin daemon, and it is a daemon is not a demon, not like some kind of mystical creature. It is a daemon, which is basically just a computer program that has a background process, like pretty simple. And so you can, in fact, use the Bitcoin daemon, Bitcoin D, by, for example, downloading the reference client for Bitcoin, which used to be called Bitcoin QT and now just goes by Bitcoin Core. This is something that I did in 2014, the first time that it was right after the moment where I understood what Bitcoin was. I was like, oh, there's a program, I should download this, and I did. And then I actually synced the blockchain. I think it took about a week at that time. It's gotten a lot faster since, but at that time I think it took about a week. And it was really amazing to me that I could just download this program and get the full financial history of an entire ecosystem on my computer. I thought that was amazing. Bitcoin D as a wallet is maybe not the most user-friendly wallet. I definitely recommend still doing it and looking around in it and seeing what you understand, because it is the reference client. Yeah, I would recommend doing that, but it's not the most user-friendly wallet. So most people these days don't keep their Bitcoin directly in the Bitcoin reference client. They use other wallets, but if you're a miner, for instance, most of them are running the Bitcoin reference client, and yeah.
I like that example, and I feel like we really missed out on an opportunity to do something with daemons and to explain how Bitcoin D stands for Bitcoin daemon. So next time.
Yes, the number of times I've had to people know we're not talking about, there are no demons in your computer. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the program. That's it.
I mean, well, there might be, but it's probably different than what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, there definitely are.
Yeah, I'm not going to go down a big rabbit hole on that one. Stay safe out there. Okay, on that weird note, let's go to the next question. Okay, so Bitcoin miners build the blockchain by adding new blocks roughly every 10 minutes. Is this true or false? I actually remember the first time I heard this question. I'll explain to you while you're all answering. I was in the car in Denver for our BTC 2019 conference. I went there early to check it out. And Michael Perklin, the chair of the board, asked me this question. And I thought, oh God. I was so nervous to be like just pulled out right there. But so the answer is that it's true. A new block that in each block contains transactions. A new block is created about every 10 minutes. And all of these new transactions are added to the new block, which is added to the blockchain. And this is what helps keep things secure, because once the new transactions are added to the block, then a new block is added afterwards. And because of more math, the information from the previous block is moved through a hash into the next block so that it can't be changed over time. Does anyone want to add to that?
I think the only thing I would add here, because it does get covered on the test, is right. The blocks are mined approximately every 10 minutes, and that timing is managed by the difficulty of sort of the crypto puzzle that has to be solved as part of the mining process. So that's why we're not saying they're mined exactly every 10 minutes, because it is a probabilistic sort of time period in which they're mined, but on average, the algorithm is maintained to have it be as close to 10 minutes as possible.
And that adjustment gets made, I want to say, every 2016 blocks. Is that?
Yep.
I think that's right.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So roughly every 10 minutes, the adjustment is every 2000. It's 2016, right? Did we just say that? Yes.
Yep.
Blocks are every 2016.
Well, hopefully not the year.
Yeah. So this is other good information to know for the CBP exam. Okay, next question. Which is Janine.
The next question is, in general, why is the Bitcoin network considered more secure when total hash power increases? And your options are: it increases the cost for an attacker to take over the network, it is not considered more secure, or it increases redundancy. And the correct answer is it increases the cost for an attacker to disrupt/take over the network. You may have heard that recently we actually had a new all-time high in terms of Bitcoin's global hash power. I can't remember. Does anyone recall what it is right now? I think it's over 231 exahashes. Can't remember.
I don't know.
Sounds right.
But yes, that was kind of significant, because even as the prices of everything are going down, a new all-time high for the hash power, which means that there is more computational power being contributed to Bitcoin than ever before, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And then this, just to connect some dots, right? This goes back to both the consensus question that Rodney had covered and the Byzantine generals problem, because this is all of that work is being put in to come to a trusted decision around a block and the mining of a block. And so the more people that are mining, which is more people that are then sort of participating in that consensus. And if somebody were to try to be a bad actor, they would have to operate a majority of that hashing power, which to Janine's point is becoming more increasingly difficult to do based on the cost and the effort that it would take.
Yeah, you know what I think would be interesting to explain right now, that just real quick, you just brought up the term bad actor. And when I first got into crypto, this was a new phrase, calling somebody an actor, saying bad actor, and what that meant. And obviously we don't mean like Nicolas Cage when he kind of goes wild in some of his movies, although I love when he does that. But what do we mean by a bad actor? Someone explain that a little.
Yeah, so a bad actor is, it's not anywhere, but essentially a bad actor would probably be someone who either wants to reverse transactions or take people's money from addresses that they don't actually own, or basically just wants to control, instead of even reversing transactions, they may just decide which transactions get confirmed and which don't, which means that you could send a transaction if the person who has the majority the overwhelming majority hash power in the network doesn't like you, then maybe they won't accept your transaction. Then you can't use your money effectively. And there's I think there's this term that gets used called 51% attack, which implies that if you have at least 51% of the network hash power, then there are certain things that you can do that in general the network would not want to happen. For example, like I said, not confirming certain transactions. That's one of the basic things that you could do if you got majority hash power. There's other things that you have to control other aspects of the system to do them to any effective degree. But for example, no matter how much hash power you have, you can't, for example, take people's coins. You would have to actually make a change to Bitcoin's actual consensus mechanism to do something like that. You can't that wouldn't happen just because you control a majority of the hash power. Something you could also do is just disrupt the network. You could possibly go back in time to a certain degree. It would be very, very expensive energy-wise, but you could go back in time and try to reverse transactions or exclude them from the blockchain history. But all of this is things that a bad actor might want to do, but it would be very expensive for them, and it's debatable whether they would even be incentivized to do it, because if they destroy trust in the network by, for example, not confirming certain transactions or reversing them or whatever, then nobody would want to use Bitcoin anymore, which means Bitcoin's price would drop. And like, what do they get out of that? It's debatable whether someone would have anything that motivates them to do that. And so that's why we have this term honest nodes, which is nodes that are actually acting out of self-interest, and the general self-interest of nodes in the network is to follow the consensus rules and not broadcast false or misleading or malformed information to other nodes, because that decreases trust in the network and can disrupt it. And then what's the point? If we're all running this monetary system and we're basically destroying it, then there isn't an incentive built into the network itself for rewarding that kind of behavior.
Yeah, and just to build on what Janine said, right? When I came into the system and learned about it, it was the whole system has been designed with economic incentives to benefit the community. And so the good actors are the ones that are trying to take actions to benefit the community, and the bad actors, as Janine described, are the ones that are working to undermine that. But the whole sort of ecosystem has been designed to try to discourage that. And so based on economic sort of structure in place.
And we're talking hash power in this question. As Janine mentioned, we just hit a new kind of all-time high for the amount of hash power being thrown at the Bitcoin blockchain every second. And to give you just a kind of a general idea of the amount of power that is, there are roughly, so a number that is got 6 commas in it, so 231, and then 5 sets of 3 zeros. Those attempts are made every second to solve the solution for the next block. So a tremendous amount of hash power. I saw a tweet last week, I think, when New York came and kind of banned Bitcoin mining in the state of New York. Someone who was a bit of a rebel decided that they were going to continue mining in New York, but manually. So they wrote out the calculation on paper, and did tried to solve it manually. It took them, I think they said, like 2 or 3 hours for one attempt. And so I don't know what the term is. I want to say like exillion or something like that, but it's a number that's got 6 commas, and that happens every second on the blockchain.
So they got it, right? I'm just kidding.
They did not.
Okay. It's a good story. It's interesting to hear. I hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah, and just quickly, I wanted to clarify the reason this question has in general in it is because theoretically, if you had a person come along who they had more, like they could basically double the hash power of the Bitcoin network, and so then they would easily control 51% of the network. And let's say they did that. So they do that, but then they are one party who is then having a majority of control over the network hash power. That is not something, like, actually there's been points in history where certain miners or mining pools would actually be approaching 51%, and they would actually back off because they could imagine or they knew that people would not respond favorably to that. And so they actually voluntarily said, okay, we're going to reduce our share of the network hash power. And so that's why we say in general, because yes, an increase in the hash power is good because it means it makes it harder for any given party to come along with a lot of hash power and have a lot of control. But if someone did come along with that much control or that much hash power, then yes, there would be an increase, but it would be controlled by one party, and that would not necessarily be a good thing.
Okay, these were great answers. I hope that everyone watching is finding them helpful in preparing for the CBP exam. We have one last section of the exam that we haven't talked about yet, which is Bitcoin commerce. So we're going to do 2 more questions here, both on Bitcoin commerce. And Rodney, take it away.
So merchants who accept Bitcoin for their products or services should keep their products priced in their local currency. True or false? It is true. The reason being is that from like a taxation perspective, it is not quite at the stage where you can determine the value of something in Bitcoin. It's still denominated in fiat currency based on wherever you are residing. So while you, in theory, could post something for sale with a Bitcoin price of 0.1 Bitcoin or something like that, when it comes time for taxation, you're going to have a fiat value attached to that. And so merchants typically want to keep things priced in fiat currency on their website for simplicity, though I have seen artists that strictly deal in Bitcoin numbers, and so it's on you to kind of do that calculation, and I am not their accountant, but I assume they have a really, really good one.
Yeah, that was a good way to explain it. It's interesting because we're still in the point where we're trying to increase the places that accept Bitcoin. And so in order to do so, there need to be more merchants that understand how to price goods and services in Bitcoin, and more people who understand how to use Bitcoin to make these purchases. And a big part of that is understanding why prices are put into the local currency so that it's easier on a number of different levels.
I also want to point out that it's not, it definitely is the case that I think a lot of people don't price things in Bitcoin because they need to price it in fiat because of the accounting and taxation requirements. But another reason is because Bitcoin's price, as you may have noticed, is relatively volatile. It's actually getting less volatile over time. If you look at the percentage increases and decreases over the years, it's getting less volatile, but it's still volatile enough where I think a lot of people would be uncomfortable pricing something in Bitcoin because you still have, you probably in your mind still have an idea of like how much a given product costs to make, how valuable it is. And if you're pricing it in something that is constantly changing in price, at least against fiat, then you have, prices on products that are constantly fluctuating, and that's like maybe you would have to change them every once in a while, and that can be a bit difficult to manage. So it's also the volatility of the Bitcoin price.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
if
that's good ad.
Tesla, I could buy my Tesla with Bitcoin, which you could, but they kept the pricing in Bitcoin. Would have been a good week for buying a Tesla.
Yes, that's a good point. It definitely does fluctuate, which because it's in the news more now and the drop feels really significant, I think it's really important what Jen just pointed out in terms of it actually is less volatile than it used to be. And many people might not know that or understand that. So it's an important piece of information for anybody that's new or isn't aware of that to understand. So we have one question. Oh, go ahead, Janine.
I was just going to say that I was, time that I got into Bitcoin when I was around in the early days, it would, the price would change by 50% or more within a day, or a couple of days. And this kind of downtrend from 60,000 to 20,000, that's like not even, that's approaching half. Now it's over half, but that took, a couple of months to get down there. So yeah, just to give an idea of how much easier it actually is now to kind of have more stability.
Okay, let's head to our last question, which is also about Bitcoin commerce.
What is a Bitcoin payment processor? A high security Bitcoin storage service, an app that accepts BTC from customers and organizations in BTC, fiat, or both, or a web-based application that allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin. And the answer is an app that accepts BTC from customers and organizations in BTC, fiat, or both. And so while there probably is a high security Bitcoin storage somewhere at the payment processor, that's not actually what it is. And it's usually one way. So you're usually sending Bitcoin to the payment processor, and the Bitcoin is then paid out to the merchant. So that is kind of leads really well into our previous question about why it's priced in fiat.
Yes, that was a great answer. Okay, we are at the end of our time, but before you go, I want to talk a little bit about what we're offering people who joined today. So you may be aware that we have a certified Bitcoin professional prep book and a prep course, and obviously there's the exam, and these all cost money. And we want to make it as easy as possible for more people to learn about Bitcoin, because obviously we believe in it, and we hope that those watching want to become certified Bitcoin professionals, and that this has helped you to make the leap towards studying more if you are inclined to do so. So if you joined today, please take a screenshot of your results. It doesn't matter what they were. Send it to us, a screenshot of this, to our email, info@cryptoconsortium.org. And I'm going to be putting that in the chat. And we will be sending you some free coupon codes to be able to become better educated to get to the point where you are ready to take the exam. So is there anything else anyone wanted to add before we say goodbye for the day? Nope. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to say is you can enroll now and take the exam later. So it's okay. And the price is lower now. So maybe you want to sign up for the exam and then wait until you are ready to go later. It's up to you. But if you sign up for the exam now, it's okay to take it later. So we appreciate you joining today. We hope this was helpful, and we will see you next month for the next live stream. And thank you to our committee members for joining today.